Okay, so today we're going to go over the utility called Perfect World. If you're running the Lazy Noob pack or the Noob Starter pack or Lazy Noob, however you want to refer to it as, um, it's under the utilities, and then you'll left click on Perfect World and then run the program. This is going to come up a little off screen, so let me just get that adjusted slightly. Okay, so here we have the default open panel for Perfect World. Now, you'll see that it has your map parameters, your biome map, elevation map, rainfall map, temperature map, drainage map, volcanism, savagery, and then options. Now, most of these we are not going to dive into this first time around. What we're going to just do is import in our world gen file. So we're going to open it up, and I already had one open at one point in time, so it defaulted me back to my Dwarf Fortress 43.03 folder. So you'll go and browse to wherever your Dwarf Fortress is. Then you'll go into the version. You'll go into data. You'll go into init. And then you'll click and open up world_gen.txt. And you'll notice that everything changed. It defaulted to has preset, and then it was going to use perfect world generated maps because everything here was selected. Once it's read in your data parameter set, it will all change based upon what you have here. Now, for example, I have a world 001 region. That was based upon a height map, and I'll get into that in the next video, but a height map that then was used to generate everything in here. So I can go to 25% and show you everything here. So this is world 001. This is a height map that I was working on, and then I brought everything into Perfect World and started messing with the elevation or the rainfall. Elevation, rainfall, temperature, drainage. All those maps were modified within this program. But what we're going to do is open up our YouTube tutorial again, and you can see that I do not have any preset being used. Everything is defaulted to random, and the only thing I have done with this world is edit in the parameters a little bit more. Now, the benefit of using Perfect World versus something, say, like a text editor, is that you get a little bit more information. So I'm actually going to open up a Dwarf Fortress, or the world gen, in my text editor. And it's not defaulting to the right text editor. Regardless, I'll just go in and edit it in Notepad, because what it is does not matter. Okay, so what I want to look at here is I'll come up to the very beginning, and we're going to go down to the YouTube, not YouTuber, but YouTube parameters. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a name. That's the title. We've got our map size, 65 by 65. And that is here in dim, 65 by 65. We have our embark points, 1504. And that is here. Get back here. Why did it click there? That is shown here. And then we have our end year 125. Now, you can see, especially with the beast end year, it says 170. So the beast end year says 100 and then 70. And when you cursor over these, it will tell you a little bit more about it. So this one says year to start checking for world gen end due to too many beasts death. And then percent of beasts dead needed to stop the world gen prematurely. So starting at year 100, it will check. So I was wrong on my percent dead. It will start checking after year 100, and if more than 70%, if 70% or more of the beast population has died, it will stop the world generation. So that is something that is very useful to make sure that your world is a little bit more realistic. Again, this one doesn't really tell you what culling the unimportant historical figures really is. I said in the first video that it does say Bob and Martha get together and they have Jimmy. Well, Jimmy doesn't do anything. Jimmy does absolutely nothing to society, for society. He goes out and drowns in a river at the age of 14 or even 30. He's never married. He doesn't have any kids. And his most successful thing in life was drowning. For a dwarf, that is successful. So he is an unimportant historical figure as far as history is concerned. Culling those unimportant historical figures will get rid of anybody who does not have a child, does not have offspring. Doesn't matter if they're 14, 30, 105. They've done nothing for society or for anyone else, so they are unimportant. And it saves some of your memory requirements and processing requirements of your computer. So if your computer isn't strong, or like my crappy i3 first gen, it can barely run Dwarf Fortress because it's an i3 with Intel integrated graphics first generation. So you may be able to save some of your requirements for your computer based upon culling your unimportant historical figures. This is really important the longer your history generation goes on. Again, you get your mineral scarcity. It tells you this: the lower the number, the more minerals you have. It gives you more information about things like your population requirement or your exported wealth, the demon types. So it gives you a little bit more information about everything. And the biggest bit is that it brings it out of the colon region of understanding, like right here, elevation frequency, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So what does that really mean? Well, if you come and find, let's find it. It's probably under map generations, yes. So here you have your elevation. I'm not sure what this means. Okay. I actually did a little bit of reading up on it, and I covered it just a little bit in the last video about the elevation. Well, not just what it is, but what the mesh size is. So it is right here. Sets the minimum possible number of squares of certain ranges of each of the region qualities, such as elevation, rain, rain, drainage, volcanism, savagery, and temperature. These need to be changed to reflect your regional meshes and weights. These are responsible for a huge number of map rejections. These values can all be set to 0 for much fewer map rejections, particularly in the case of more wacky, non-standard maps. These values will cause worlds to be rejected unless at least the given number of squares of the given type are randomly generated. Setting these values too high could result in worlds always being rejected if other parameters, such as the maximum, minimums for elevation, etc., don't allow enough of those squares to get generated. So, right there is part of the problem with some of my maps getting rejected. Especially in the last video, I think that I was showing some of, or I was talking about generating a map for someone else, and I was getting a lot of rejects, and that would be the reason why. So, now I know that my weighted ranges are all based upon making that a possibility. Now I'm going to come back in here and do the actually I think that if I come up here, Dwarf Fortress World Generation Advanced, Control 5, Mesh Sizes and Weights. So I'm just going to dump right down into here and hit up my mesh sizes. So this is a little bit different than what I just read. What I read was at the very end, but this is going to go into a lot more detail, and this is what I'm wanting to read is the interaction between the mesh size and variance. The end result can vary greatly depending upon how the corresponding X and Y variance parameters are set. First, if it's set too large, the noise it adds can completely negate the effect of the weight range. A 2x2, the variance parameters are high enough, the mesh grid can hardly be recognized. How strong the variance's effect is also dependent upon the mesh size. So this last line, I think, is going to be the important bit. This means that a large world with a 2x2 mesh will look essentially the same as a pocket world with a 2x2 mesh, only stretched to 256 times the size. So it sounds as though, let's read up here, it says the mesh size determines how many grid tiles there will be. Setting this to ignore will cause the weighted range settings to be ignored for that terrain characteristic. As an example, setting it to a 2x2 means the grid will be 2 times 2 tiles large, and there will be 3 times 3 for a total of 9 intersection points. On a pocket world, this means one grid tile will be 8 by 8 world tiles large, whereas on a large world, one grid tile will be 128 by 128 world tiles. Note that the highest possible value for any given world size will always make the grid tiles 8 by 8 world tiles large. So if we come here and we uh, 8 by 8 and elevation, I'm really not that concerned about elevation, so as long as one is generated, I can handle that. If on a pocket world, Note that the highest possible value for any given will always make grid tiles 8 by 8 world tiles large. So I'm still not sure if that means I need to pick an 8 by 8 or if I can do a 32 by 32, and that just means that the maximum size will always be 8 by 8 world tiles. I wanted this to be 0, 1. Oh, 1 to 20%. Drainage. We're going to try something new. And I think the only thing that I'm really going to do is change the volcanism. We'll run it first the way that we're setting it up here, and then we'll come back in and see. We'll come back in and then change some of these weighted ranges and see exactly what is different. And we'll use that with the same seed. So we'll generate one, get the seed, and then put the seed back in, generate again, changing these weighted range ratio percentages. So it's 20 to 40%, 0 to 20%. So we'll come in and mess with these a little bit to see exactly what we're going to change. Excuse me. But as you can see, Perfect World does a little bit better job of breaking out what your options are, giving you a little bit more of information about what everything is. Like, what is this? This causes to create rain shadows. Oh, that's fine. So, orographic precipitation, it creates rain shadows. I can show you the rain shadows in the next video, generating them here to where it creates a rain shadow map. So, if you're doing map parameters as in the text editing version to where we're not going to use Perfect World, then this is something that I would suggest strongly to keep on. You'll see why in the next video, but for now I would keep this on. So what we're going to do is we've changed these all to 32s. So we're going to come in and export the world gen. So it's been exported out. Now we're going to run Dwarf Fortress. And see, this is good for all of us. I'm learning stuff as well. We're going to have to get our Dwarf Fortress a little bit better. I love that. Thank you. And I apologize, this time you are actually... No. We're going to do this to where you don't have to worry about the header. Just give me a second to resize here. I was not completely prepared. We're going to move. Nope. Wow, it resized it. It wouldn't let me put it above. Okay, so we'll resize it. You're going to have a header. I apologize. Okay, so we're going to design and create a new world. And I have to take a quick pause, a phone call. Okay, sorry about that. I got a call from my lovely wife and trying to decide what we're going to do for dinner. Okay, so we will continue and we will do our RedTube tutorial. Remember, we changed the mesh size to 32 by 32 on everything. So we will see what changes. Oh, now this is interesting. We've already got a rejection. Remember what we read back here. Actual size. Variance is too large. Noise. Okay, setting this to ignore, for example. Setting this to a 2 by 2 grid. Where did I read? Rejection parameters. Okay, so we're going to need to find this again. Here we go, right here. Weighted ranges do not make rejection checks, although they can be responsible for many rejections. So, if the mesh size is set to something other than ignore, these weights will be applied at the granularity of the selected mesh size for purposes of generating random values in each range. For starting with the 0 to 20 range, these values do not have to add up to any particular number, and the elevation min-max are set to 1 to 400. Then about 60% of the grid line intersection points will be set to an elevation range in the range of 1 to 80, 0 to 20%. And the other ranges will represent about 10% of the intersections of intersection points each. The exact distribution is still left up to chance, though on average it will be close to this specification. So it sounds as though weighted ranges do not make rejection checks. Although they can be responsible for many rejections if you neglect to adjust or disable some of the minimum number of mid-low characteristics, for example. And then over here in another one I read, these values will cause worlds to be rejected unless at least the number of given squares of the given type are randomly generated, setting them too high. So it seems as though somewhere it didn't get generated and has caused a rejection. Well, we are going to allow the rejection type and continue, and we're going to do that regardless. So even if we get another rejected, we're going to continue and carry on with our little experiment to see how this affects everything. Okay, so there is our world. Now, you might think that I am going to export, but I'm actually not going to. At least not export all. We're going to come in, and it's region 4. We're going to go into Legends. And then we only need to export out the map gen info. So all we have to do is press P. And that should have done it. So we will come back into our Dwarf Fortress folder, and we will look for region 4. And right here is region 4 world history and region 4 world gen param underscore text. So this is the seed that we're going to want to use. And we're going to see if we cannot get that seed. Let's open up, back up our perfect world. We're going to do the main seed. So there's our seed. Our volcanism, we're going to change this to 60, 40. We're going to use, or 10. We're going to use what was in the wiki for elevation, just because we can. Now we're going to, sorry, I realized I didn't have that centered again. I went ahead and corrected my centering of the Dwarf Fortress, so that's why there's no more border at the top. And we're going to export it, and we say yes. Now we can come back in here. We're going to create a new world. No. See, I went ahead of myself. Abort. Going to design with new world with advanced, and you can see there's the seed that we just used. We're going to hit the YouTube tutorial. The world looks roughly the same. Low elevation rejection. So there you go. That was what I didn't pay attention to the last time. Now we're getting a high elevation rejection. We're going to continue. So you can see we've got more rejection sites this time. We have 1415. The last time we only had 695-ish, I believe. But let's see about our volcanism. Let's see what happens with that. Okay, so we're going to accept. Now for this, I am actually going to go back and export the full thing because I can easily import it into a graphics program like GIMP or Photoshop. Look at the two world maps on... I cannot talk and do this. I've never been able to. We will be able to go in and export legends all. Go in and export everything. We can look at the maps on top of each other and then be able to compare everything that way. So I'll be back after I finish this one and the next one. Okay, so I brought in the worlds, Region 4 and Region 5, into GIMP so that we can look at it as an overlay. And something rather weird has occurred. The worlds are not exactly the same. So even though I've used the same seed, I actually expected this to be a non-trivial or foolish endeavor. I expected the geographic seed to trump any other setting, but that is not the case. I will mark it on a new layer. I will... Oh, come on. New layer. So, I'm going to come in here and I am going to choose... I'll choose this bright orange. Okay, so we're going to use a pencil and we're going to mark these two volcanoes. They're here. So that's on Region 4. Now, if we come over here, we can see that on Region 5, we have two volcanoes there. Now, these volcanoes are higher up in the mountain. Take this off. You can see they're in mountains. Whereas these two on Region 5, they're in the lowlands. They're not in mountains anymore. Oh, we got one here too. So we do have one in a mountain there. And I probably should have picked a different color for... We'll choose this god-awful violet for Region 5. Oh, now those two are near a tower. That's kind of nice, and this is in the middle of what will likely be a haunted or terrifying region. So there you go. If you mess with any of the settings in your mesh sizes, so if I turn these back to 1s, export that again, we should end up with exactly the same world as we did for World 4, because we're using the same geographic seed. So you can see here we had the same seed for region 5. Now let's see. Region 4. I don't know. We will allow it. 695 rejections. Look at that. We have the 2 volcanoes in the same place. Our road is roughly the same, but we have different. Everything is looking pretty much very similar. The only difference are our roads and our civilizations. So here, our dwarven civilization up on this mountain range was very limited. Here you can see there are a lot of dwarves up in here. So our civilizations are slightly changed. Our world is exactly the same. So it appears that even messing with using a seed and changing your mesh weights, possibly even your mesh size, that will generate different terrain because you've changed something that this seed is actually using. The seed sets all of this information. So it might be interesting to try and decode that later. I'm not going to worry about it right now, but that might be something worth going in and playing with and trying to decode and understanding that seed a little bit more, so that you might be able to one day just use the seed to change everything. But that just goes to show you that using Perfect World, where you have more understanding of what you're changing, because it's broken out a little bit better than just the text editor, or even in using the in-game editor, you can come in here and play around with it a little bit easier, because it's all right there with a little bit handier of a tooltip, a little bit more information than what you have on the in-game. I changed that. That was not a goodie. Well, I'll go back and fix that, or not even save it and just re-import it and have that all fine. But that's a little bit more information for how to use Perfect World, and also a little bit more information on the parameters themselves, and how even if you use a seed, apparently you can still change it by changing the mesh sizes. So the seed does not trump all. The seed can still be overwritten by what you change later on in the file. So that is actually good to know. It seems that the seed will be taken first, and then your parameter file will be read in. And if you make any changes within those additional parameters, it will change your seed. So that's something to keep in mind. It makes for an interesting change that you may or may not realize has happened based upon your world gen. You might say, well, I used the seed. Why did this change? Well, you might have changed something else in the parameter file, and that overwrites what your seed says. So there's a little bit more information for you, a little bit of cautionary story, that just because you've set it with a seed, you might not get it based upon having something different here. That, I guess, is very good to keep in mind if you've changed your seed based upon something someone else has, but you have other changes in your file. So I guess don't just rely on the seed. Make sure that you use the seed and the other parameters. I'm going to go and play with the seed only and see if just having a seed in there and nothing else will create a habitable world, or if something gets completely messed up. Until next time, leave your questions, comments below, and we'll keep learning together. This is a last-minute addition. I just realized as I was encoding the video that I only covered the general parameters and map generation parameters, and I totally overlooked the map rejection parameters. So by going in here, you can change this to where you will get a more acceptable world. I'm just going to set most of these to much less than what they were, and see if we don't start getting a world that will not fail. Elevation ranges, minimum low ranges, let's make that 600. I'm going to make that 250. 250. Whoops. What in the world happened there? And then this is going to be 250, and we're going to do 100 for that one, 100 for that one, so this is going to be 250. One thing that I don't like about Perfect World is that it does not select the full field of what you're tabbing into. So that makes it a little more painful. I should be, I guess, using the mouse, but habit. Okay, so there we go. We've got everything changed to much lower regions. We're going to export that, and then we're going to load it back up. And let me readjust the window a little bit. And a little bit more, and there we go. Okay, so let's try this. We're going to regen. Remember the last time, I believe I left the meshes alone. No, I changed them back. Okay. We'll do this real fast. So the last time, I'm going to back out and go back in so it refreshes that. The last time we had 695 or 1345 reject sites. This time we only had 43. So that is one way to get your map to regen, or to generate without the high rejection count, by dropping your numbers. So it's another thing that you can keep in mind. If you've gotten a world that you're getting a lot of rejections on, go ahead and mess around with those reject parameters. And also on your mesh sizes, if you've changed those, mess with those until you get something that you can really enjoy, you like, and you want to keep. Alright, that is officially it. See you next time.